What happened to Ellaria Sand after King's Landing was destroyed? When Daenerys burned King's Landing, tens of thousands died. Soldiers, mothers, children, kingslayers. But one woman did not. Deep beneath the Red Keep, chained in darkness, Ellaria Sand lived. Or did she? What happens to vengeance when it runs out of things to kill? Far below the city's ruins, in a cell built for ghosts, Ellaria Sand breathes the dust of her own undoing. The world above has turned to ash. The Iron Throne melted, her captor incinerated, her kingdom erased. Yet still, somewhere in the bowels of the Red Keep, she lingers, silent, unremembered, and unavenged. We never see her again on screen. The show leaves her fate untold, but her story doesn't end when the camera looks away. It ends in the dark, with a single, unbearable truth. Vengeance does not die, it starves. Once, Ellaria was the voice of passion, of dawn's sunlit rebellion. She loved Oberyn Martell as fiercely as she hated his killers. But that love curdled into poison, and that poison carried her here. To this dungeon, to this silence, to this living tomb. King's Landing burned, and Ellaria burned with it. Not in flame, but in memory. She became what she despised most, another casualty of the game, another mother who could not save her child. In this video, we descend into that darkness to ask what remains of a woman when her revenge, her purpose, and her world are gone. Because sometimes survival is the cruelest punishment of all. The Dungeon Queen. The Red Keep was built to house kings, but beneath its stones lies a kingdom of the forgotten. There, in the black cells, Ellaria Sand sits chained to the wall, a queen of nothing, ruling over dust and decay. When Cersei condemned her to watch your daughter rot, it was not a sentence of death. It was a sentence of witness. Ellaria's eyes were forced open as her child's body turned from flesh to memory. When the door sealed behind Cersei, she was left in eternal dusk, a mother entombed with her grief. We never return to her on screen. There is no body, no closure, no confirmation, but the truth of her fate is written in the architecture of her cell. No escape, no light, no sound. A tomb within a palace. She is buried alive long before the city burns, and yet, in that darkness, she becomes something else, a relic of vengeance preserved in her own silence. The woman who once screamed for war now breathes in the same stillness she once inflicted. It is the irony Cersei intended. Ellaria's vengeance has found its mirror. Days blur into years. The guards stop coming. The world above shifts and shatters, but the stones beneath do not care. The lion falls, the dragon rises, the bells toll, and somewhere below the ashes, a single heartbeat continues, stubborn, cruel, unyielding. Ellaria Sand remains. Whether alive or dead no longer matters. She has become part of the dungeon itself. The echo that lingers after wrath has consumed all else. A queen of ruin wearing her silence as a crown. The nature of vengeance. Before the cell, there was the kiss. Ellaria's lips pressed to Myrcella's cheek. The same lips that had once whispered to Oberyn of love, of peace, of sunlit dawn. That kiss was her declaration of war, her signature in poison. It was not madness. It was grief pretending to be purpose. When Oberyn died, Ellaria's world split open. She had built her life around his warmth, his laughter, his conviction that justice could exist within cruelty. When his skull was crushed, her faith in balance died with him. So she replaced belief with vengeance. In Westeros, vengeance is always disguised as justice. It makes monsters feel righteous. Ellaria told herself she was avenging love, but love had long since decayed into obsession. Each act of retribution only deepened the wound. The more she punished, the less she remembered why she began. Her coup in Dawn, her murder of Myrcella, her alliance with Daenerys, all of it stemmed from one unbearable truth. She could not resurrect the man she loved, so she tried to recreate him in herself, fearless, merciless, untouchable. But vengeance does not give power, it only lends it for a price. And when that power is spent, it leaves only silence. In her cell, Ellaria begins to understand this. There are no names left to curse, no faces left to blame. The Lannisters are dead, the dragons gone mad, the city turned to ash. Her revenge is complete and meaningless. This is the final stage of vengeance, not satisfaction, not justice, but emptiness. When every enemy is gone, you face what remains, and sometimes what remains is nothing. The Mirror of Cersei. Cersei and Ellaria never shared blood, yet they shared a fate. Two mothers, each mourning a child stolen by the cruelty of another. Two women who loved so fiercely that love became indistinguishable from wrath. Their hatred for each other was not born from difference, but from recognition. When Cersei gazed down into that dungeon, she saw herself, what she could have been if born in the sun instead of the shadow of the rock. Ellaria, in turn, saw in Cersei the aristocrat's cruelty that had taken Oberyn from her. But beneath that, she saw a truth she could not admit. They were the same creature. Cersei's punishment of Ellaria was not mere vengeance. It was a ritual of reflection. By forcing Ellaria to watch her daughter die, Cersei reenacted her own torment. It was her way of screaming into the mirror, of telling the gods, "See what you made of me." And Ellaria understood. In that final gaze, as the poison took Tyane's breath, there was no defiance, only comprehension. The cycle was complete. The mother who had weaponized love now suffered the same fate. Both women had been shaped by men, by lovers, fathers, sons, and both had tried to seize the masculine power of control, only to wield it through the language they knew best. Love turned inside out. For both, love became a form of domination. Motherhood became strategy. Ellaria's dungeon is Cersei's future made literal, a tomb beneath the Red Keep, a life entombed by vengeance. When the city burns, both women vanish into the same silence, one crushed beneath stone, the other forgotten beneath it. And so their rivalry becomes something mythic, the Ouroboros of grief devouring itself. Neither wins, neither survives. Both become fragments of the same warning, that love, when it refuses to let go, becomes indistinguishable from hate. Cersei's kiss of death was only the echo of Ellaria's own, the same gesture, the same sin. Two mothers, two graves, one mirror. The death of meaning. Vengeance promises clarity. It whispers that if you strike hard enough, the world will make sense again. But sense is the first casualty of revenge. Ellaria had believed her pain would balance the scales, that one royal child's death could weigh against Oberyn's broken skull, yet the scales never shift. They only multiply the weight. Each act of retribution births another ghost, another reason to strike. What began as justice becomes arithmetic, bodies for bodies, names for names, until the numbers no longer matter. Down in her cell, Ellaria has nothing left to calculate. Cersei's gone. The Lannisters are dust. The dragons have devoured the city that devoured her heart. The song of vengeance has ended, and she is the echo that refuses to fade. In that silence, she begins to feel what all warriors of revenge eventually feel, meaning collapse. The moral logic that justified her rage dissolves. There is no satisfaction, no resolution, only the memory of purpose without the purpose itself. She stares at the wall and realizes the wall does not care. Revenge is a kind of faith. It believes in a moral order that does not exist. When that illusion dies, only absurdity remains. Ellaria has become her own god, her own prisoner, her own worshipper. Her ritual complete, her altar crumbling, she faces the only truth left, that vengeance cannot resurrect the dead. It can only imitate their silence. Somewhere above her, King's Landing smolders. The Iron Throne melts into a river of red metal, the perfect symbol for every cause that ever claimed to be righteous. And beneath it all, Ellaria Sand sits alone, staring into the dark, finally understanding that her war ended long before the flames came. The fall of the city. When the bells rang, the city begged for mercy. Ellaria could not hear them, but she would have understood their sound. Deep beneath the red keep, she would have felt the tremor before the fire, the stones groaning, the air tightening, dust falling from the ceiling like snow. Above her, the dragon screamed, and the world she once tried to control dissolved in heat and shadow. It is a kind of poetic symmetry. The woman who built her life around vengeance now witnesses vengeance perfected, not by her, not by Cersei, but by a girl with dragons who believes that fire is justice. Daenerys becomes the final expression of the same disease, a conviction that pain can cleanse. The flames roll through the streets like judgment, consuming the innocent and the guilty alike. The mothers die clutching their children. The lovers die in each other's arms, and somewhere below, Ellaria breathes in the ash. She is spared not by grace, but by irrelevance. The dragon does not care about her name. History no longer needs her. She survives because she has already been erased. When the ceilings collapse, perhaps she prays to the gods of dawn, or perhaps she laughs, a dry, cracked sound swallowed by the roar above, because this is the end she has been moving toward since Oberyn's fall. The city that once symbolized everything she hated now mirrors her perfectly. Proud, ruthless, destroyed by its own need for retribution. The fire outside her walls is the physical echo of the fire that once burned inside her, and like her, it consumes until there is nothing left to burn. When the smoke clears, King's Landing becomes a graveyard of ideas, justice, power, prophecy, love. All of it turned to ash, and in that ash lies Ellaria's truest fate, to outlive her story, to breathe in the ruin of her own reflection. The city dies, and with it dies the illusion that vengeance ever ends, the tomb of memory. When the ashes settled, no one searched for her. The soldiers who sifted through the rubble did not descend into the cells. There were no orders, no songs, no names. The Red Keep was only another ruin among thousands. Beneath it, Ellaria Sand became a secret the world forgot to remember. But oblivion is not always mercy. In the stillness of that tomb, her existence lingers, not as flesh, but as story waiting to be told. She becomes the embodiment of what vengeance always leaves behind, a whisper, a scar, a warning. Perhaps years later, a scavenger finds her bones chained to the wall. Perhaps not. What matters is that no bard will sing for her. Dawn will not mourn her. Her enemies are dust, her daughters are gone, and the world has moved on. Yet in that silence, she achieves a strange kind of peace. The cycle that consumed her, the fire, the hate, the hunger, finally ends. She becomes what every avenger secretly seeks but never attains: stillness. Ellaria Sand remains where she always was, between rage and memory, between punishment and release. A ghost humming softly beneath the stones, the quiet below the fire. In the end, Ellaria Sand's fate is not a mystery. It is a lesson. The woman who lived for vengeance becomes the last witness to its end. While dragons turned the world to ash, she waited in the dark and learned what every conqueror eventually must, that silence is stronger than fire. Her story closes without light, without audience, without mercy. But in that void, she finds truth, that justice built on grief consumes itself, and only stillness endures. The fire fades, the city sleeps, and somewhere deep below, a heartbeat echoes once more, then stops,